Major trade talks between China and the United States have wrapped up in Beijing, and the visit of Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea this week. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. China and the United States have concluded 2 days of trade talks in Beijing. Both sides had frank discussions on a range of areas as they try to resolve their ongoing trade dispute. Issues like U.S. exports to China, two-way investment, and tariffs were on the agenda. Meanwhile, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi made a visit to the DPRK this week, where he met with its leader Kim Jong-un. The meeting comes as efforts to resolve nuclear issues on the Korean peninsula continue. We will have more on that later, but we begin with those big trade talks between China and the United States. CGTN's Nathan King has been following that story closely, and he joins us now from our newsroom. And Nathan, what do we know about how these talks went, and what's been the reaction?
Well, very little official reaction. Nothing in front of the cameras with big handshakes, for example, saying we've had a breakthrough. But let's face it, we didn't expect a breakthrough, did we? We expected them to be quite negative, and it looks like they were. We've got a couple of statements for you. First of all, let me read you one from Xinhua, the news agency from China. Part of it says, both sides recognize that given that considerable differences still exist on some issues, continued hard work is required for more progress. Essentially, what that means is there will be more talks. The big question is what action there will be in between. As usual, US President Donald Trump gave a slightly upbeat assessment of what's been going on. Let's take a listen.
I have great respect for President Xi. That's why we're being so nice, and we have a great relationship. But we have to bring fairness into trade between the U.S. and China, and we'll do it. Are you sure that Michael Cohen...
The big question, of course, is what were the US asking? And actually, the opening negotiating document was actually issued to the US media here. And it's very interesting because it actually is a very maximalistic approach, more than actually US President Donald Trump had said publicly before these talks get underway. Let me read you a couple of the key points, Anand. They're asking for a $200 billion reduction in the China-U.S. trade deficit by 2020. That's double what the US president had asked for of $100 billion. Halting subsidies for key industries under the Made in China 2025 plan, which, as we know, is a cornerstone of Chinese economic policy, ending technology transfer requirements for US companies doing business in China, strengthening intellectual property protections, no surprise there. This is the biggest surprise to me. Drop World Trade Organization complaints or imposing retaliatory tariffs on US goods. Essentially what the US position was that you have to agree not to take any of this to the multilateral forum that's usually used for these sort of disputes, the WTO, and also if we slap tariffs on you, you've got to agree not to impose them back, which of course is a central sovereignty question. Now, we don't know how much the US moved away from that position during negotiations. They are back here in the next few hours, and we'll be talking to the US president about steps forward. Just one other thing I want to add, the White House did issue a statement, and in the word, it was a normal sort of diplomatic statement. There was one word that stood out. It said, we are going to take immediate action. So big question mark about whether they'll move forward on the tariffs while these talks are still going on.
Okay, thanks, Nathan. That's CGTN's Nathan King reporting.